The Great Hall of the Galactic Alliance was silent. Thousands of alien representatives sat in their floating chairs, their eyes fixed on the center stage. Today was an important day. The humans were finally sending their military representative to join the Alliance forces. Stood near the front row. He was a species known for their blue skin and large dark eyes. At 24 years old, he was considered ancient among his people. Most retired from military service at 25. Their bodies simply could not handle the stress of combat beyond that age. Had one more year left, and he planned to spend it training the younger soldiers. The doors of the Great Hall opened slowly. Every alien in the room turned to look. They expected to see young, strong human warriors. Instead, they saw something that made their hearts stop. An old woman walked through the doors. She moved slowly but with purpose. Her hair was completely white, pulled back into a tight knot. Her face was covered in deep lines and old scars. One scar ran from her left eyebrow down to her chin. Her eyes were dark and sharp, like a hunter watching its prey. She wore a simple military uniform, dark gray with silver buttons. On her chest were dozens of medals, so many that they covered half of her upper body. Each medal told a story of a battle won, an enemy defeated, a war survived. Felt his legs grow weak. He turned to his assistant, a young named Bora who was only 16 years old. "How old is she?" whispered. Bora checked her data tablet with shaking hands. The records say 80 standard years. 80? Could not believe what he was hearing. That is impossible. No living creature can still fight at 80 years old. But there she was, walking toward the stage as if she had done this 1,000 times before. And knowing humans, she probably had. The woman reached the center stage and stood there calmly. She did not seem afraid or nervous. She looked at the thousands of aliens watching her with the same expression a grandmother might give to misbehaving children. "My name is," she said. Her voice was not loud, but somehow it reached every corner of the hall. "I am the human military commander assigned to the Galactic Alliance forces." A diplomat, a tall creature with 4 arms and green scales, stood up from his seat. "Forgive me, Commander, but there must be some mistake. We requested an active military leader. Surely the humans did not send someone of your advanced age." Smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had heard this question many times before and was tired of answering it. "You asked for our best," she said simply. "Here I am." The hall erupted in whispers. Heard aliens around him talking in confused voices. Some were laughing. Others looked worried. Many simply did not understand what they were seeing. A general named stood up. He was 23 years old, considered to be in the prime of his life. "With respect, Commander, how can you still serve in the military? Among my people, anyone over 25 is considered too old for combat. Our bodies cannot handle the stress. Our minds become slow. We lose our strength and speed." Turned to look at him. For a moment she said nothing. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph. She held it up so everyone could see. The photograph showed a young woman, perhaps 20 years old. She had bright eyes and a wide smile. She wore the same military uniform that was wearing now. "This is me," said. 60 years ago, I was a new soldier fresh from training. Do you know how many battles I have fought since then?" No one answered. 437 continued. "I have been shot 16 times. I have been stabbed 8 times. I have survived 3 explosions, 2 poison attacks, and 1 time when an enemy ship crashed directly onto my position." She put the photograph back in her pocket. "I am still standing. I am still fighting, and I will continue to fight until my heart stops beating." The hall was completely silent now. Even the ones who had been laughing were quiet. Felt something strange in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many years. It was fear mixed with something else. Respect, perhaps, or wonder. A young soldier raised his hand nervously. "Commander, may I ask, Do all humans live this long? Do all humans fight for so many years? Nodded. Humans can live to 100 years or more. Some of our greatest warriors were over 90 years old when they won their final battles. We do not see age as weakness. We see it as experience. Every year we survive makes us stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. She paused and looked around the hall slowly. Her eyes seemed to find every single alien in the room, one by one. "I know what you are thinking," she said. "You are thinking that an old woman cannot protect you. You are thinking that the humans made a mistake by sending me. But let me tell you something." She stepped forward, and somehow that small movement made her look 10 feet tall. "The enemies you fear. I have been killing their kind since before your grandparents were born. The weapons they use. I helped design the defenses against them, the tactics they rely on. I wrote the book on how to defeat them." Put her hands behind her back and stood straight. "You wanted the best the human race has to offer. That is not some young soldier who has only seen a few years of combat. The best is someone who has spent a lifetime learning how to win. The best is someone who has looked death in the face so many times that they are no longer afraid of it." She smiled again, and this time it was almost warm. I am 80 years old, and I am going to teach you what real war looks like." Sat down slowly in his chair. His legs could no longer support him. He looked at Bora, who had tears in her eyes. "What is wrong?" he asked. "Nothing is wrong," Bora whispered. I never thought I would see something like this. She is amazing." Nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand why humans were feared across the galaxy. It was not because they were strong. Many species were stronger. It was not because they were fast. Many species were faster. It was because they simply refused to stop. The meeting continued for several more hours. Plans were made. Strategies were discussed, but barely heard any of it. His mind kept returning to the image of that old woman walking through the doors. 80 years old, 437 battles, still fighting. He thought about his own retirement, just 1 year away. He thought about how his body already felt tired and weak. He thought about all the things he would never do because his species simply did not live long enough. And for the first time in his life, understood what it truly meant to be human. It meant never giving up, no matter how old you were, no matter how tired you felt, no matter how many times you had been knocked down. You simply got back up and kept fighting. Had proven that today, and tomorrow she would prove it again on the battlefield. Could not wait to see it. The transport ship cut through the darkness of space like a knife through water. Inside, Commander sat quietly in her seat, her eyes closed but her mind very much awake. She was thinking about the battlefield waiting for them. She was thinking about the young soldiers she would have to lead. She was thinking about all the ways this mission could go wrong. Beside her sat her second in command. At 62 years old, he was considered young by human standards but ancient by everyone else. His hair was gray at the sides, and his face showed the marks of many years of combat. He had served under for 35 years. He trusted her with his life. "Commander," said quietly, "we will arrive at the border station in 2 hours." Opened her eyes. "Good. Have you reviewed the reports?" "Yes. The alien soldiers are mostly between 18 and 23 years old. The oldest one is Commander. He is 24, shook his head slowly. They think he is too old to fight. They are planning to retire him next year. 24, repeated. She almost laughed. When she was 24, she had just started her military career. She had not even seen her first real battle yet. What about their training? Basic combat skills. They learn to fight for about 5 years, then serve for another 5 years, then retire. Their entire military career is 10 years at most. Was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her own training, which had taken 15 years. She thought about the decades of experience she had gained since then. She wondered how these young aliens would react when they saw real combat. They have never faced a long war, she said finally. They have never known what it means to fight for years without rest. No, agreed. Their wars last a few months at most. If a battle takes longer than that, they simply give up and negotiate peace. Then they have much to learn. The transport ship landed at the border station 2 hours later. The station was a massive structure floating in space, built to house thousands of soldiers from many different species. It was the last line of defense against the enemy forces that were slowly pushing toward the heart of Alliance territory. When stepped off the ship, she was greeted by silence. Hundreds of alien soldiers were waiting on the landing platform. They were young, all of them. Their faces were smooth and unmarked. Their eyes were bright and curious. They looked at like she was some kind of strange animal they had never seen before. Was there too, standing at the front of the group. He had been assigned to work with, to help her understand Alliance military methods. But as he watched the old human woman walk toward him, he wondered if it was actually the other way around. Behind him came 3 more humans. They were all old by alien standards. The youngest was a woman named who was 55 years old. The oldest was a man named Wu, who was 73. Wu walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Welcome to Border Station 7, said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Commander. I will be your guide and assistant during your time here." Studied him carefully. She saw the nervousness in his eyes. She saw the way his hands were shaking slightly. But she also saw something else. She saw a soldier who wanted to do his duty, even if he did not fully understand what that duty would require. "Thank you, Commander," she said. "Please show us to our quarters. We have much work to do." As they walked through the station, noticed how the alien soldiers looked at her. Some of them were curious. Some of them were confused. Many of them were afraid. One young soldier, a boy who could not be older than 18, whispered to his friend as passed by. "Look at her skin. It is so wrinkled. How can she even move?" Heard him but did not react. She had heard such comments many times before. They did not bother her anymore. But heard it too. He stopped walking and turned to face the young soldier. "Boy," said calmly, "that woman has more kills than you have days in your life. She has survived battles that would make your nightmares look like pleasant dreams. When you speak about her, you will show respect. Do you understand?" The young soldier's face went pale. He nodded quickly and looked down at the ground. Continued walking without another word. They reached their quarters an hour later. The rooms were small but clean, designed for alien bodies that were much smaller than human ones. Had to bend down to get through the doorway. "We will need to make some changes," she said, looking around. "Larger beds, stronger chairs. Human bodies are built differently." Nodded quickly. "I will arrange it immediately, Commander." Good sat down on a chair that creaked dangerously under her weight. "Now tell me about the enemy. What are we facing?" Pulled up a holographic display showing the border region. Red dots indicated enemy positions. There were many of them, spread across a wide area. "The enemy is called he explained. "They are aggressive and numerous. They attack without warning and show no mercy. We have been fighting them for 6 months now." "6 months," repeated. "And what progress have you made?" Hesitated. "We have held our position." "You mean you have not advanced?" "No, Commander, we have not." Nodded slowly. She had expected this. Defensive fighting was easy. Anyone could hold a position for a while. But winning a war required more than defense. It required offense. It required the will to push forward no matter the cost. "How many soldiers have you lost?" she asked. 12,000 in 6 months, said quietly. "Many more have been injured and retired from service." "And the enemy?" "We estimate we have killed about 15,000 of them." Did some quick math in her head. "So you are losing almost as many as you are killing. That is not sustainable." "No, Commander. That is why we asked for human help." stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the vastness of space, filled with distant stars and hidden dangers. Somewhere out there, the enemy was waiting, planning, preparing for their next attack. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want to see the front lines. I want to meet the soldiers. I want to understand how you fight." "Commander, the front lines are dangerous. Perhaps you should." Turned to look at him. Her eyes were cold and hard. "Commander, I have been to more front lines than you have had birthdays. I have stood in places where death was so close I could feel its breath on my neck. Do not tell me where I should and should not go." Swallowed hard. "Yes, Commander, I will arrange transportation for tomorrow morning." "Good," turned back to the window. "You are dismissed." Left the room quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. He had commanded soldiers for years. He had faced enemy fire without flinching. But something about that old human woman scared him more than any battle ever had. It was not her age. It was not her scars. It was the way she looked at the world, like she had already seen everything and was no longer surprised by anything. It was the calm certainty in her voice, like she knew exactly what was going to happen and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. That night, as lay in his bed trying to sleep, he thought about what the next day would bring. He thought about the front lines. He thought about the enemy. And he thought about the 80-year-old woman who had come to teach them how to fight. For the first time in his life, felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, the humans could show them a way to win this war. Maybe that old woman with her white hair and her hundreds of medals could do what no one else had managed to do. Maybe she could teach them how to truly fight. Closed his eyes and finally fell asleep, dreaming of battles yet to come. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon when the alarm started screaming. Was already awake. She had been awake for an hour, checking her weapons and reviewing the defense plans. When the alarm sounded, she simply stood up, grabbed her rifle and walked out of her quarters. The hallways were filled with chaos. Young alien soldiers were running in every direction, their faces full of fear and confusion. Officers were shouting orders that no one seemed to hear. It was exactly the kind of mess that had seen 100 times before. She found near the command center, trying to organize the response. His hands were shaking, and his voice was barely steady. "Commander," he said when he saw her, "they are attacking. A large force, at least 5,000 soldiers. They hit our eastern positions without warning." "Show me," said calmly. Pulled up the tactical display. Red dots were swarming over the eastern part of their defensive line. Green dots, representing Alliance soldiers, were falling back quickly. "We are ordering a retreat," said. "We will pull back to the secondary positions and—" "No," said. "Blink to what?" "No retreat, we hold the line." "But Commander, the enemy force is too large. If we stay, we will be overrun." Looked at him with those cold, hard eyes. "Commander, if you retreat now, you will have to fight twice as hard tomorrow to take back what you lost today. Every piece of ground you give up makes the enemy stronger and your soldiers weaker. But the casualties will be higher if you retreat, trust me." Put her hand on his shoulder. "I have seen this exact situation before, many times. Running away does not save lives, it only delays death." Wanted to argue, but something in his voice stopped him. There was absolute certainty there, the kind that only comes from decades of experience. "What do you want us to do?" he asked quietly. "First, stop the retreat. Order all soldiers to hold their current positions. Second, send reinforcements to the eastern line, every soldier you can spare. Third, prepare the heavy weapons. We are going to push back." "Push back against 5,000 enemy soldiers." Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "By the time I am done, there will be far fewer than 5,000. Appeared at side, already armed and ready for battle. Behind him came and Wu, the other human soldiers. Despite their age, they moved with purpose and confidence. "Orders, Commander?" asked. "We are going to the front line," said all of us. The transport took them to the eastern positions in less than 10 minutes. What saw when she arrived made her shake her head slowly. The Alliance soldiers were hiding behind their defensive walls, barely looking over the top. The enemy was advancing slowly, taking their time because they knew the defenders were too afraid to fight back. Every few seconds, an enemy soldier would fire a shot, and the Alliance soldiers would duck down even lower. "This is pathetic," Wu growled. He was 73 years old, and his patience for cowardice had run out decades ago. Walked toward the defensive wall. The Alliance soldiers stared at her in shock. An old human woman, walking calmly toward the battle line while they were all hiding. "Who is in charge here?" demanded. A young officer raised his hand nervously. He was maybe 19 years old, barely old enough to be called an adult. "I am Commander, Officer Jin." "Officer Jin, why are your soldiers hiding?" "The enemy fire is too heavy, Commander. We cannot." "Cannot what? Cannot fight? Cannot do your job?" Grabbed Jin by the front of his uniform and pulled him close. "Look at me, boy. I am 80 years old. I have arthritis in my hands. My knees hurt when I walk. And I am about to climb over that wall and show your soldiers what courage looks like." She released him and turned to her human soldiers. "Take the left side. Take the right. Wu, you are with me in the center." "Understood, Commander," they all said together. Climbed over the defensive wall. The movement was not graceful. Her old bones protested every step, but she made it to the other side and stood there in the open, looking at the enemy force advancing toward her. The soldiers stopped moving. They had never seen anything like this. An old woman standing alone, facing their entire army without fear. Raised her rifle and fired. The shot hit the lead enemy soldier directly in the chest. He fell without making a sound. "That is how it is done," shouted over her shoulder. "Now get over this wall and fight." For a moment nothing happened. The Alliance soldiers were too shocked to move. Then and climbed over the wall, followed by Wu. They spread out and started firing, their shots hitting enemy soldiers with perfect accuracy. Jin watched in disbelief. These old humans who should have been in retirement homes resting their tired bodies were fighting like warriors from legend. They moved without hesitation. They fired without missing. They showed no fear at all. Something changed inside Jin at that moment. He did not know what it was, but he felt it deep in his chest. It was shame mixed with determination. If these old creatures could fight, then so could he. "Everyone over the wall," Jin shouted. "Fight, fight now." One by one, the Alliance soldiers climbed over the defensive wall. They were scared, but they were more scared of looking like cowards in front of the humans. They started firing at the enemy, their shots wild and unpracticed at first, but growing more confident with every passing second. The force had expected an easy victory. They had expected the Alliance soldiers to run away like they always did. Instead, they found themselves facing a wall of resistance led by an old woman who seemed impossible to kill. Moved through the battlefield like a ghost. Despite her age, she was everywhere at once, directing soldiers, adjusting positions, firing shot after shot at the enemy. Whenever a soldier started to lose courage, she was there beside them, her presence alone enough to make them fight harder. The battle lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting. 6 hours of shooting and screaming and dying. Most alien soldiers would have collapsed from exhaustion after the first 2 hours. Their bodies simply were not built for prolonged combat. But kept going, and Wu kept going. They did not rest. They did not slow down. They fought as if they could fight forever. By the time the sun reached its highest point in the sky, the force was broken. More than 3,000 enemy soldiers lay dead on the battlefield. The rest were running away as fast as they could, their confidence shattered by the fierce resistance they had encountered. Stood in the middle of the battlefield, surrounded by the bodies of her enemies. Her uniform was covered in dirt and blood, some of it hers. A wound on her arm was bleeding slowly, but she ignored it. Jin walked up to her, his legs barely able to support him. He had never fought for so long in his entire life. He felt like he might die from exhaustion. "Commander," he said weakly, how are you still standing?" Looked at him and smiled. For the first time, it was a warm smile. "Training," she said simply. "Experience, and most importantly, the refusal to give up." She put her hand on Jin's shoulder. "You did well today, officer. You found your courage. That is the first step to becoming a real soldier." Jin felt tears forming in his eyes. He did not know if they were from exhaustion or emotion or both. "Thank you, Commander." Nodded and turned to look at the battlefield once more. The fight was over for now, but she knew it was just the beginning. There would be more battles tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. But today they had won, and that was enough. Wu limped over to stand beside her. His old injury was bothering him, but there was a satisfied look on his face. "Good fight," he said. "Yes," agreed. "A good fight indeed." Behind them, the Alliance soldiers were slowly beginning to understand what had happened. They had won a battle that they should have lost. They had stood and fought when everything told them to run away. And they had done it because an 80-year-old woman had shown them how. The legend of was just beginning to spread. 3 days had passed since the first battle, had not slept properly in any of them. He spent his nights watching the humans, not out of suspicion, but out of pure fascination. He watched run training sessions that lasted for hours. He watched demonstrate combat techniques to young soldiers until his voice went hoarse. He watched and Wu patrol the defensive lines long after everyone else had gone to rest. And he watched them fight. They attacked again on the second day. A smaller force this time, testing the defenses, led the response personally, fighting for 8 straight hours without stopping. When the battle ended, she simply walked back to the command center and started planning for the next attack. She did not rest, she did not complain, she did not show any sign of weakness. Could not understand it. His body was already failing him at 24 years old. His joints ached constantly. His reflexes were slower than they used to be. He needed 10 hours of sleep every night just to function normally, and even then he felt tired. But slept for 4 hours a night at most. She ate simple meals quickly, never taking time to enjoy her food. Every moment she was awake, she was working, fighting, or teaching. On the third day, finally found the courage to ask her about it. He found her sitting alone in the observation room, looking out at the stars. For once, she seemed peaceful, her face relaxed and her eyes distant. Almost did not want to disturb her, but his curiosity was too strong. "Commander," he said softly, "may I speak with you?" Turned to look at him. "Of course, Commander, sit down." He sat in the chair beside her, feeling small and young despite being the oldest member of his species in the station. "I have been watching you," he admitted. "You and the other humans. I do not understand how you do it." "Do what?" "Everything," shook his head slowly. "You fought for 18 hours in the first battle. 18 hours. My people cannot fight for more than 6 hours without collapsing from exhaustion. Our bodies simply give out." Nodded. "I know. I have read about your species. Your metabolism burns fast and bright, but it burns out quickly." "Yes, exactly. By the time we are 25, our bodies are worn out. We cannot fight anymore. We cannot work hard anymore. We spend the rest of our lives resting and recovering." "And how long do you live?" Thought about the question. "About 60 years on average, but the last 30 years are spent in retirement. We are considered old at 30. Smiled softly. "At 30, I had just been promoted to captain. I had my whole career ahead of me." "That is what I cannot understand," said. "How do humans last so long? How do you keep fighting when your bodies should be failing?" Was quiet for a long moment. She looked back out at the stars, her expression thoughtful. Let me tell you a story, she said finally. When I was young, maybe 20 years old, I asked my grandmother the same question. She was 92 at the time, still working in her garden every day. 92. Could barely imagine living that long, let alone working at that age. Yes, I asked her how she kept going, how she did not just lie down and give up. Do you know what she told me? Shook his head. She said that humans are like water, smiled at the memory. Water seems soft and weak. You can put your hand right through it, but water carved the Grand Canyon. Water shaped the mountains. Water wears down the hardest stone given enough time. I do not understand. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest but we endure. We persist. We keep going long after everyone else has stopped. Turn to face him directly. Your people fight with fire, Commander. You burn bright and hot, but you burn out quickly. Humans fight with water. We flow around obstacles. We wear down our enemies. We never stop pushing forward. Felt something shift inside him. It was like a puzzle piece falling into place, revealing a picture he had never seen before. That is why you do not retreat, he said slowly. That is why you told us to hold the line. Exactly. Every time you retreat, you teach your soldiers that retreating is acceptable. Every time you give up ground, you make it easier to give up more ground tomorrow. But if you stand and fight, if you refuse to move no matter what, eventually your enemies will be the ones who break. But the cost, so many soldiers die. Yes, agreed, and there was sadness in her voice. War has a price, it always has, but the price of surrender is higher. The price of giving up is everything. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to. I have lost many soldiers over the years, she said quietly. I have sent young men and women to their deaths. I have watched friends die in my arms. I have carried the weight of those losses every single day for 60 years. How do you bear it? Turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was steady. By making sure their deaths meant something, by winning the war, by protecting the people they died to save. That is the only way to honor them. Stood up slowly. His legs were shaking, but not from fear this time. It was from the weight of understanding. I am going to retire next year, he said. My people say I am too old to fight, too old to be useful. And what do you think? Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the battles he had seen. He thought about the soldiers he had trained. He thought about all the things he still wanted to do. I think I do not want to stop, he said finally. I think I want to keep fighting even if my body is tired, even if everyone tells me I am too old. Smiled. It was the warmest smile had ever seen on her face. Then do not stop, she said. Do not let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. You decide when you are done. You decide when to rest. Not your government, not your doctors, not your culture. You. But my body. Your body will surprise you, Commander. Trust me. Walked over to him and put her hand on his shoulder. I have seen soldiers who should have died keep fighting for hours. I have seen wounded warriors refuse to fall until the battle was won. The body follows the mind. If your mind refuses to give up, your body will find a way to keep going. Felt tears forming in his eyes. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. In his culture, old age was seen as weakness. Once you reached a certain age, you were expected to step aside and let the young take over. But was showing him a different way, a way where experience was valued, where age was seen as strength, not weakness, where the will to fight mattered more than the years on your record. Thank you, Commander, he whispered. Patted his shoulder gently. You have many good years left in you. Do not waste them sitting in a retirement home waiting to die. Use them, fight, live. She turned and walked toward the door. Now I believe we have work to do. The enemy will attack again soon. And when they do, I want you standing beside me. Straightened his back. For the first time in years, his body did not feel old and tired. It felt ready. "Yes, Commander, I will be there." Nodded and left the room. Stood alone for a long moment looking out at the stars. He thought about everything had said. He thought about his future, the one he had assumed was already written. Maybe it was time to write a new story. Maybe it was time to show his people that age was just a number. Maybe it was time to fight like a human. Smiled and walked out of the observation room, ready for whatever came next. The final battle came on the 7th day. They had gathered their entire remaining force for one massive assault. Intelligence reports said there were 20,000 enemy soldiers moving toward the border station. It was the largest attack the Alliance had ever faced in this region. When the news reached the station, panic spread quickly. 20,000 soldiers was more than 3 times the number of defenders. Many Alliance officers immediately began planning evacuation routes. They talked about retreating to safer positions, regrouping and fighting another day. But had other plans. She stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy army. Behind her stood and Wu. Around them were dozens of Alliance officers, all of them terrified of what was coming. "We cannot win this," one general said. "The numbers are too great, we must retreat." "No," said simply. "Commander, please be reasonable. This is suicide." Turned to face the general. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "General, I have been fighting wars since before your species discovered space travel. I have faced armies larger than this one. I have stood against enemies who thought they could not be defeated, and every single time I won." "But how can we possibly?" "By fighting smarter, by using every advantage we have, by refusing to give up no matter how dark things seem." Looked around the room at all the frightened faces. "I know you are scared. I know this seems impossible, but let me tell you something my grandfather told me when I was young." The room fell silent. He said that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being terrified and fighting anyway. Every hero who ever lived was afraid. The difference is that they did not let their fear control them. She walked to the center of the room. "Today, we have a choice. We can run away and let the enemy win. We can abandon this station and everything we have built here. We can go home and tell our families that we were too scared to fight." Paused. "Or we can stand. We can show them that they made a mistake by attacking us. We can prove to the entire galaxy that the Alliance is not weak, that humans are not weak, that we are warriors who will never surrender." Stepped forward, his back was straight, his eyes clear. "I stand with Commander," he said loudly. "I am 24 years old. My people say I am too old to fight, but today I choose to prove them wrong." Jin, the young officer from the first battle, stepped forward as well. "I stand with Commander. She taught me what courage means. I will not dishonor that lesson by running away." One by one, other officers stepped forward, and dozens of other species. Some of them were shaking with fear. Some of them had tears in their eyes, but all of them stood ready to fight. Smiled, "Then let us show what we are made of." The battle began at dawn. They came in waves, thousands of soldiers pouring across the battlefield toward the Alliance positions. The noise was deafening, a wall of sound made up of weapons fire, explosions, and screaming soldiers. Stood at the front line, her rifle in her hands. She fired shot after shot, each one finding its target. Beside her and moved with deadly precision, cutting down enemies before they could get close. Wu had set up a heavy weapon position and was firing bursts into the enemy ranks, his old hand steady on the controls. The Alliance soldiers fought harder than they ever had before. Jin led a group of young in a countercharge that broke through the enemy's left flank. Commanded the reserve forces, moving them to wherever they were needed most, his tactical mind working faster than it had in years. Hours passed. The sun rose higher in the sky. The battlefield became covered in bodies, and still the fighting continued. Lost track of time. She moved through the chaos like she had done so many times before, her body running on pure instinct. A young soldier fell beside her, wounded by enemy fire. Without thinking, she grabbed him and dragged him to safety, then went right back to fighting. At some point during the battle, she was hit. A weapon burned through her side, leaving a wound that would have killed most aliens instantly. Looked down at the damage, grunted once and kept fighting. She would deal with it later. Right now, there was a war to win. Was wounded too, a deep cut on his leg that made him limp badly, but he refused to leave the battlefield. When a medic tried to take him away, he pushed them aside and picked up his rifle again. "I am not done yet," he growled. The turning point came at midday. They had thrown everything they had at the Alliance positions, but the defenders had not broken. Wave after wave of enemy soldiers had crashed against the defense line, and wave after wave had been pushed back. And then something happened that no one expected. They began to retreat. At first, thought it was a trick, a feint to draw them out of position. But then she saw the expressions on the enemy soldiers' faces. They were not retreating as part of a plan. They were running away in pure terror. They had never seen anything like this before. They had expected the Alliance soldiers to break after the first few hours, like they always did. Instead, they had found an enemy that would not stop fighting. An enemy led by an old woman who seemed completely impossible to kill. They were not defeated by superior firepower or better tactics. They were defeated by something they could not understand: human stubbornness. When the last enemy soldier disappeared over the horizon, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. The Alliance soldiers stood among the wreckage, covered in dirt and blood, barely able to believe what had happened. They had won. Lowered her rifle slowly. Her body was screaming in pain. The wound in her side was bleeding badly, and she could feel herself getting weaker by the second. But she forced herself to stay standing. A commander did not fall in front of her soldiers. Ran toward her, his face full of joy and disbelief. "Commander, we did it. We actually did it." Smiled weakly. "Of course we did, Commander. Was there ever any doubt?" Then her legs gave out and she fell. Caught her before she hit the ground. "Medic," he screamed. "Get a medic now." Lay in his arms, looking up at the sky. It was a beautiful sky, clear and blue and endless. She had seen many skies in her 80 years of life. She wondered if this would be the last one. "Commander," said, his voice breaking, "stay with me, help is coming." Whispered, "Did we win?" "Yes, Commander, we won. The enemy is gone." Smiled, "Good, that is good." She closed her eyes. When she woke up 3 days later, she was in a medical bed. Was sitting beside her, his leg wrapped in bandages but his face full of relief. "Welcome back, Commander," he said. Tried to sit up, then winced as pain shot through her body. "What happened?" "You collapsed from blood loss. The doctors said you should have died. They could not understand how you kept fighting for so long with that wound." Shook his head slowly. "But then again, they do not understand humans." Laughed, then immediately regretted it as her side erupted in pain. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that any reasonable person would retire. But I know you, Commander. You will be back on your feet within a week." "Sooner than that," said firmly. Smiled, "I expected nothing less." A week later, stood before the Galactic Alliance Council once again. She was using a cane now, but she refused to sit down. A commander stood before her soldiers. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every species in the Alliance had come to see her. Even species that were not part of the Alliance had sent observers. The story of the Battle of Border Station 7 had spread across the galaxy. An old human woman had led an outnumbered force to victory against impossible odds. An 80-year-old grandmother had fought for 18 hours straight with a wound that should have killed her. An army of young alien soldiers had learned to fight like humans and had defeated an enemy 3 times their size. It was the kind of story that became legend. The Alliance leader, an ancient named Saul, stood up to address the assembly. "Commander," he said, his voice formal but warm, "on behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I offer you our deepest gratitude. You have shown us what is possible when courage meets experience. You have taught our soldiers lessons they will never forget. You have given us hope." Nodded, "Thank you, Council Leader. We would like to offer you a permanent position as Supreme Commander of all Alliance forces. With your leadership, we believe we can finally end this war." Looked around the chamber. She saw standing near the front, his back straight and his eyes proud. He had decided not to retire after all. She saw Jin and the other young soldiers she had trained, their faces full of respect and admiration. "I accept," she said. The chamber erupted in cheers. Later that night, stood on the observation deck of the station, looking out at the stars. Stood beside her. "What are you thinking about, Commander?" he asked. Smiled, "I am thinking about retirement." His face fell. "Are you going to leave us?" "No," laughed. "I am thinking about how happy I am that I never retired. So many people told me I was too old. So many doctors said I should stop, but I kept going and look where it brought me." She turned to face him. "Do you know what the secret to life is?" "What?" "Never stop. Never give up. Never let anyone tell you that you are too old or too weak or too anything. Just keep fighting. Keep moving forward. Keep living." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Humans do not stop until the universe does. And even then, I think we would find a way to keep going." Smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had worn in years. "I think I finally understand, Commander." "Good," turned back to the stars. "Because we have a lot of work to do. The war is not over yet, and I plan to see it through to the end." "How long do you think that will take?" Shrugged. "However long it takes. A year, 10 years, 20 years, it does not matter, I will be there." Nodded, "And I will be there with you, Commander." They stood together in silence, watching the stars spin slowly in the endless darkness of space. Two soldiers from different worlds, brought together by war and united by something stronger than blood or species. The will to never give up. The determination to keep fighting. The human spirit. And far across the galaxy, the enemies of the Alliance looked at their reports and felt something they had never felt before. Fear. Because they finally understood what they were facing. Not just soldiers, not just weapons. They were facing humanity. And humanity never stopped.